At the morning of my 64th birthday, my daughter secretly changed my will and held a private meeting without me. She assumed I wouldn't check until the next scheduled review. The lawyer had no reason to suspect fraud. I did not argue. I did not beg. I picked up my phone and told my lawyer to sell the house within 12 hours. That moment came later. The day began with something much quieter. My name is Lenora Wexley. I am 64 years old. I woke to a silence that felt heavier than usual, the kind that settles in before anyone has the courage to speak the truth. Birthdays were never grand occasions in my house, but there was always something from Claire, a card, a voicemail, a plate of muffins left on the counter. This year, the counter held nothing but a cold mug I forgot to wash last night. I checked my phone, expecting at least a short message. Instead, a text arrived at 7:53. In a meeting, later, Mom. The terse message left no room for misunderstanding, signaling it had been composed with intent, not carelessness. I tried to shrug it off, but the uneasy feeling had roots. Last week, in Claire's home office, I noticed a folder half tucked under a stack of journals, Harrington and Vale. Probate division. I brushed it away at the time, assuming it belonged to her husband. But now, on my birthday morning, the memory returned with a sharper edge. I walked to my own desk, opened the drawer where I kept my personal papers, and stared at the will I had signed 2 years ago. Somewhere deep inside, I felt something shift. Not panic, just a cold. Familiar understanding that something had been moving around me without my knowledge. A text tone echoed through the quiet room. It was not Claire this time. It was a reminder from my lawyer, Alan Drayton. About a document review I had postponed, I picked up the phone. Today, I realized I needed answers before anyone wrote my future for me. I opened the drawer where I kept the older paperwork, hoping the familiar signatures would steady me. Instead, a thin manila folder slid forward, one I didn't remember placing there. The tab read, Will Revision. Draft in Claire's handwriting. I felt my throat tighten. Inside were pages I had never seen. The first line hit like a blunt strike. Primary beneficiary Claire Wexley, contingent upon approval by all co-trustees. Lenora Wexley remains co-beneficiary with legal authority to block transfers. My own name was pushed to the margins, mentioned only in legal phrasing that made me sound like a temporary occupant instead of the owner. I never agreed to this. I whispered, though no one was there to hear it. Some pages were replaced with a draft that omitted sections on medical care, charitable gifts, and property division. Claire had likely compiled a selective copy. I flipped through the packet twice, then a third time sections on medical care, charitable gifts, and property division were gone. I remembered signing the originals in Alan Drayton's office 2 years ago. Claire had driven me that day. She'd waited in the lobby, smiling like she was proud of me for finally getting organized. A memory rose her voice from last month during dinner. Mom, you should simplify your affairs. You don't need so many separate documents. It's confusing at your age. I'd laughed it off. I'm not 80 yet. She'd only smiled in that tight way she used when she already had an answer prepared. I pressed my fingers against the desk to steady them. The house had been in my name for more than 30 years. I'd paid every mortgage installment myself, scraped through winters with leaking pipes, worked late shifts at the lab so Claire could have textbooks and camps and the things I'd never had. And now she had quietly carved me out of my own life. My phone buzzed again, a calendar reminder for the document review with Alan. For years, I'd trusted Claire to act in my best interest. Now I needed to see exactly what had been rewritten behind my back. I sat on the edge of my bed with the altered will still open beside me. The numbness didn't last long. It cracked, and memories pushed through years I'd tried not to revisit. After my husband died, Claire was only 12. I worked double shifts at the medical lab, Sometimes 3 weekends in a row, when Claire wanted to tour colleges, I paid for every flight and application fee. "Mom, I'll pay you back," she'd promise. "You just focus on school," I always said. Her tuition drained nearly all the savings her father and I once shared. Then came the student loans too high, too fast. I covered those too, that gratitude. Once sincere, now felt like a tool she wielded to normalize dependence and entitlement. When she bought her first condo, she called crying about the down payment. "I can't lose it. Mom, I approved a wire transfer of $25,000. After confirming the account details and intended purpose with Claire and Chase, childcare, medical bills, car repairs, every crisis brought her back to my doorstep with soft words and trembling hands. And every time, she left warmer, lighter, promising we were close again. Every expression of warmth coincided with financial or logistical requests, revealing a pattern of conditional affection. The documents and past transactions highlighted a repeated cycle of reliance that had been enabled over years. I placed the altered will back into the drawer and locked it, my fingers trembling only once before going still. This wasn't the first time I'd felt a shift beneath my feet. 5 years ago, after a minor health scare, I consulted Alan Drayton to discuss precautionary legal safeguards, including a revocable living trust. "You fainted from exhaustion," the doctor had said later, but exhaustion was enough. It reminded me how fragile everything could become. Alan met me the same afternoon. He'd been my family lawyer for more than 20 years. Steady as a metronome behind that mahogany desk. "You need protection, Lenora," he said gently, "not from strangers, from circumstances." I heard the unspoken part. Grief, illness, even family. He walked me through the idea of a revocable living trust. I listened, numb from fear, while he explained how it would secure the house legally under my name alone, no matter what pressures came later. "You'll be the sole trustee," he said. "Full authority to sell, transfer, or manage the property without anyone's consent. No beneficiary can override you." "That sounds extreme," I whispered. "It's not." He folded his hands. "It's prudent. I signed the documents that evening." Still pale, still shaken. I remember the way he slid the final page toward me. "This is your safeguard," he said. "And Claire?" I asked. "She doesn't need to know unless you choose to tell her." I never chose to. Claire had always assumed the house would pass to her automatically. I let her believe that because I wanted peace. I wanted the illusion that we were a family who trusted each other. Now, holding the memory of her hidden revisions, I felt something inside me harden. I had built safeguards for moments exactly like this quiet betrayals disguised as responsibility. She rewrote my will, but the rules, those were mine to change. I stared at the drawer one last time, then reached for my phone. My hand didn't shake now. It felt steady in a way I hadn't felt in years. Alan answered on the second ring. "Lenora, you all right? I need to activate the trust authority." I said, "All of it." A pause. Then, "You want to sell the house?" "Yes, today." He exhaled slowly. "The market moves fast. I can call a buyer's agent and a cash investor. But once we start, there's no pulling back." "I'm not pulling back," he didn't argue. "I'll draft the listing packet. I'll also contact a cash buyer I trust. He closes in under 12 hours if the paperwork's clean." "It is," I said. "You made sure of that?" After we hung up, I walked to my bedroom closet and pulled down 2 suitcases I hadn't touched since Claire's wedding. I opened the first one and laid it on the bed. I didn't pack much. My husband's watch, a stack of letters he wrote me in the early years, the recipe book my grandmother gave me, a framed photo of Claire when she was 8. before life turned complicated. Every item I picked up came with a story, and every story carried weight. Not enough to make me stay, but enough to make me breathe a little slower. My phone rang again. Alan found a buyer. He said, a man named Jace Turner, Portland local, cash ready. He wants a walkthrough within an hour. So soon. He knows the neighborhood. Houses here don't last. I felt the house shift around me, not physically, but in the way a memory loosens its grip. Tell him I'll be here, I said. I zipped the smaller suitcase and set it by the door. The second I left empty, I didn't need more than what I'd already chosen. My home of more than 30 years was about to become someone else's. And Claire would return expecting everything she'd quietly arranged to fall in place. She had no idea the ground beneath her was already gone. Jace Turner arrived first, mid-40s, calm voice, firm handshake. He reviewed the trust documents at the dining table while Alan joined on speakerphone, confirming every legal detail. We were finishing signatures when the front door opened. Mom Claire's voice echoed sharply down the hallway. I didn't move. Jace glanced up, but kept reviewing the final page. Claire stepped into the dining room and stopped cold when she saw the folders. The signed forms. The man she didn't recognize. What is this? She demanded. Why are there sale papers on the table? Claire arrived, unaware that the legal signing session was private. Her husband, Mark, entered only after being invited to witness the process. Are you selling the house? You told me you were updating the will. Not. He broke off when he noticed my suitcase by the wall. Claire slammed her hand on the table. This is my inheritance. You can't do this. Mom, Jace looked at her evenly. Ma'am, your mother is the sole trustee. She has full authority to sell. Everything is compliant with Oregon law. Claire's head snapped toward me. Trustee. What trust? You never told me anything about that. It wasn't your responsibility to manage. I said. She took a step closer, voice trembling with anger. I brought these documents to my lawyer because I'm trying to plan our future. You're making this impossible. Mark moved forward, jaw tight. You should have consulted us. We're family. You tried to rewrite my will without speaking to me. I said quietly. Claire's lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked at the sale agreement, then at Jace, then at me as if the room had shifted without her permission. This house was supposed to stabilize us. She whispered, we were counting on it. You counted on something that wasn't yours, I said, her face flushed with humiliation. Anger layered over fear. Fear layered over entitlement. She could no longer defend. Mark muttered, this isn't over. But it already was. They just hadn't caught up to the truth. As Claire's eyes filled with a hurt I no longer knew how to soothe, I felt the question rise, steady and sharp inside me. Had she ever been looking at me or only at the house? Claire followed me into the living room, her steps sharp against the hardwood. Mark stayed close behind her, breathing hard. As if preparing for a fight he believed he could still win. Sit down, I said. My voice surprised even me, steady, calm. Final. I won't sit, Claire snapped. Not until you explain why you're blowing up our entire future. Our future, I repeated softly. Or yours. Mark stepped forward. We're in trouble, all right. The business is drowning. We were hoping to use the house as leverage, but we hadn't confirmed the legal authority. Claire flinched at his bluntness. Mark, stop, no. I said, let him speak. He lifted his chin. We were counting on this property. Claire told me you'd leave it to us. She said you understood. My daughter's shoulders sagged. I was going to tell you, Mom, I just needed the papers in order. You don't understand how desperate things are. I understand more than you think. I said, I raised you. I worked night shifts so you could go to college. I paid your loans when you cried on the phone. I covered your down payment, your childcare, your emergencies. Every time you needed something, I stepped in. That's not fair, she whispered. What's not fair? I said. is waking up on my birthday to see my will rewritten by my own daughter. Alan's voice came through the speakerphone, steady as ever. Claire, your mother is the sole trustee. That authority overrides any will revision. No beneficiary can alter or block the sale. Claire's knees buckled slightly. She grabbed the back of the couch. I didn't think you'd actually use that trust. I thought it was just paperwork. It was my safety. I said, the one thing I kept for myself. Mark threw his hands up. Unbelievable. We could lose everything. You won't lose my house, I said, because it never belonged to you. Claire looked at me, then really looked. Her face crumpled. Not with anger this time, but something raw. Something like fear. Mom, she said, voice breaking. I needed you. I was here. I answered. For decades. She covered her face with both hands. Shaking, Mark turned away, defeated. The room went quiet, heavy with truths neither of us could take back. If loving her meant destroying myself, then the choice had already been made. By late afternoon, the paperwork was ready. Jace returned with the final documents, and Alan remained on speakerphone to witness each signature. Claire sat on the arm of the couch, silent and small, while Mark paced like a man who still believed anger could undo a legal fact. Jace placed the final page in front of me. Once you sign this, the house officially transfers. My pen hovered only a second. I'm ready. The signature came out calm, almost graceful. Jace gathered the pages and nodded. I'll file everything within the hour. Once you sign this, the house transfer process begins, though actual fund clearance may take several business days. He slid a small metal ring toward me. These are the buyer's keys. Once you hand yours over, it's done. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the single house key I'd used for more than 30 years. The metal felt warmer than it should have. I set it gently beside the others. Claire's voice cracked. Mom, please don't leave like this. I'm not leaving you, I said. I'm leaving the part of my life that kept me small. She didn't answer. Neither did Mark. When they stepped outside to get some air, I walked through the house one last time. My hand drifted across the hallway wall, over the faint pencil marks where I used to measure Claire each spring. She was 6 the first time I drew a line there. She'd worn her favorite pink sneakers and insisted they made her taller. I stood there longer than I expected. The house was quiet now, but it was a different quiet one that no longer demanded anything from me. I took my 2 suitcases to the car, loaded them into the trunk, and closed it softly. Jace and Alan were wrapping up their calls on the porch. Claire and Mark stood by the driveway, both looking lost in their own ways. I didn't say anything as I started the engine. I didn't need to. I checked my mirrors, took a steady breath, and drove away from the only home I'd ever owned, with nothing but the essentials and the freedom I'd earned. I moved into a small 1-bedroom apartment off Ladd's Addition the next morning. The place was quiet. The kind of quiet that didn't judge me or wait for me to rescue anyone. I set my suitcases by the wall and plugged in my phone. It lit up instantly, 8 missed calls, then 12 more. Then a string of texts arriving so fast the screen froze. Mom, you can't just disappear. We need to talk. You ruined everything. Please answer me, please. I didn't open a single one. Mark tried next. His messages were sharper, colder. You blindsided us. You owe us an explanation. Claire is falling apart. I blocked him first. Claire took longer. I stared at her name, thumb hovering, heart tight for reasons I couldn't name. Then another message arrived, long, frantic, begging me to undo a decision she'd never given me the right to make. I blocked her too. For the first time in years, the silence that followed felt like air I could breathe. An hour later, another notification buzzed. A different name, Evan Wexley Grandma. I heard what happened. I'm not choosing sides. I just want you to be okay. Can I visit you this weekend? I sat down slowly, reading his message twice. Claire's son was 16, now old enough to understand more than she thought, but still gentle in ways she never let herself be. I typed back, I'd like that very much. By evening, the apartment held a small lamp, a folded blanket, and the hum of a refrigerator that didn't know me yet. I stood by the window, watching cyclists pass, smelling the faint sweetness of nearby rose gardens. My phone stayed quiet on the counter. For the first time, the quiet didn't hurt. It felt earned. By the end of my first week in the apartment, I'd learned the rhythms of the building, the elderly couple who argued lovingly at 6 every morning, the college kid who practiced guitar too loudly, the mailman who always whistled the same tune. It felt human, manageable, mine. At the community garden 2 blocks away, a woman about my age waved me over. "You're new here," she said. "I'm Marla." "Lenora," I replied. "I've never gardened with strangers before." She laughed softly. "We're only strangers for the first day." We worked beside each other, turning soil, clipping dead leaves, sharing quiet pieces of our lives. She didn't pry. She didn't treat me like a burden. When I mentioned I'd just moved, she only said, "Fresh starts are brave." Then handed me a pair of gloves. Later, we sat on a wooden bench, hands dusty, knees touching accidentally like people who hadn't expected company but were grateful for it anyway. "You seem lighter than when you walked in," she said. I answered. I stopped carrying something that was never mine to hold. That evening, Evan visited with a small plant he'd bought using his weekend shift money. "It's for your new place," he said. "Mom's still upset, but I wanted you to have this." I hugged him tightly. "Thank you for choosing kindness." He smiled. "Does this place feel like home yet?" "Not yet," I said. "But it will." After he left, I placed the plant on the windowsill and let the soft glow of the city settle around me. A life without fear or obligation stretched out in front of me, quiet, steady, and entirely mine. If you felt something in my story, don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. When you finally choose yourself, who do you become?